everyone. Today we're going to talk about malts and porters. Now, I started making porters about the beginning of December 2020, and if you're new to my channel, I like to start at the base and then work my way up. I think homebrewing, you should take it step by step, start out easy, then start adding stuff as you find malts that you like, malts, hops, yeast that you like. So in this series, the porter series, I wanted to get a whole bunch of different adjunct specialty grains that I can make a whole bunch of beers and see what what malts or what malt combination I like the best. Now today we're going to talk about 5 of them that I have here. We're going to look at them, we'll taste them, and then we'll have some beer reviews. There's other malts that are involved in a porter, but right now I want to say like the darker malts that you would use in a porter, except for like this coffee. It's a brown, it's probably the lightest one, but we'll get into that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the BJCP guidelines for an American porter and English porter. So for an American porter, it's 20A in the BJCP 2015 guidelines, ABV 4.8 to 6.5, IBUs 25 to 50. Now, it's going to depend on what you do. Some of the malts you use could add bitterness, so the perceived bitterness is higher. Malty dark beer with complex and flavorful dark malt character. English porter is a 13C per BJCP 2015, ABV 4 to 5.5, IBUs 18 to 35. Moderate strength brown beer with roasted character and bitterness, may have a range of roasted flavors, generally without burnt qualities. Now, so you could have, per the guidelines, an English porter that is also an American porter in my eyes, because you can get that IBU range. You could have it a little on the less roasty side, so it's going to depend on how the beer turns out. And if you're not putting it in any competitions, who cares, really? I mean, most brewers, they don't really follow the guidelines. They call it whatever they want. So anyway, so let's get into some of these malts. Now, I was starting these, like I said, in December, and then I got the Brew Your Own magazine, and they had a whole bunch of information and recipes in there for porters. So I'm going to kind of go off that and also add my own thoughts. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first malt. Pale chocolate and coffee malts, usually 180 to 260 level bond. Coffee malt, more of a city roast coffee aroma. The pale chocolate, more nutty full city roast coffee / chocolate aromas. Aromas and flavors might get lost in bigger porters, might be best in standard porters, maybe up to 20% of the grain bill, would start around 10. And I think that's true. So I have 2 base porters using this crisp pale chocolate done. Actually, I think they're about ready to drink here in a couple days. And that's the feel I got. I started making these and I got the magazine. So if I'm going to go ahead and just lay some of this out on here on this paper towel so we can see it. I didn't think it would be very good if I did it along with the granite of the counter. So if we look, it is a little lighter in color, and you'll be able to see that against the other ones that we take a look at. But on this one, when I picked it up, because at the homebrew store, when I went up there, they have most of the darker ones right next to each other. They're not spread all out, and I could tell this was lighter. So in thinking about it, I was like, oh, I wonder if you're going to have to use a darker crystal just to make it, you know, that dark brown-ish color, maybe pushing black. But I think it's going to turn out okay. Usually when you ferment, it is going to lighten up some. But yeah, I would say, per what I said about the nuttiness, that holds true in both of the versions I made. It was a little bit more nuttier than it was like a chocolate roasted malt or anything like that. Now, most of the time you're not going to be able to do this, but let's go ahead and smell them out of the bag, then we'll taste one. It smells like malt, not that much roast, maybe a touch of sweetness in there, but that's about it. And I would suggest tasting the malts if you can. Now, when they're in bags like this, you're not going to be able to do this, but I'm guessing bigger homebrew stores, I think Bell's has a lot of them, they're in bends, so you can take a couple out and taste it. So let's go ahead and grab a couple and taste it. Yeah, very roasted bread, a little bit of sweetness, like not burnt bread, but dark bread. Like if you have a setting on your toaster of 1 through 10, this is probably a 7. A little bitterness in there, but there is some sweeter nuttiness that comes out more than the chocolate. I think that toasted bread nuttiness is about the biggest thing you get out of this, and that is about it. A touch of sweetness, but yeah, definitely more nuttiness in toasted bread than anything. So yes, this might be a good malt that you would want to use in your porter. So next, let's look at the coffee. So now this is Simpson's Brown Coffee. I do not know if they make other versions. They might, but this is actually one I'm brewing with today. I made the beer today. Now looking at this, it says level bond is 161.8 to 225.6, where the crisp pale chocolate is 200 to 240. So this one is going to be lighter yet. This might be better in a brown, or you're going to have to add a darker malt to it if you want to add it to a porter. Now what I'm doing is I'm testing this, so I match this up with Crystal 60 just to see what flavor profile I got from it. So let's go ahead and open the bag. I'll get it out here side by side of this. And we can kind of see the difference. Okay, so you guys are looking at a picture of them side by side, and really it is a very small difference in the color of these, if you ask me. It almost looks like the brown coffee isn't as burnt. It's a little lighter roast than the pale chocolate. But that's just comparing what I have sitting right here. Let's go ahead and smell, see if we get anything different. Sweeter, it's definitely a little sweeter. Very light coffee is what I get. Compared to the nuttiness of that pale chocolate. Let's go ahead and taste a couple. Definitely more coffee. That darker bread. If anything, I would say the roast is a little heavier than the pale chocolate. Like this is probably an 8 on toast, on your toaster, instead of a 7. But it does give a little bit more coffee. Yeah. So those are the lightest two, or two of the lighter ones. Now again, there are a ton more malts that you can use. If you go to Northern Brewer or AIH More Beer, I'm sure you're going to be able to find a lot of them. I've got 5. I'm going to pick up one more, but we'll talk about that at the end. But let's get into the next one, which would be a chocolate malt. Now, a chocolate malt level bond is usually 325 to 450. Vienna to French roast, coffee, dark chocolate aromas to the beer. Might get burnt toast. Now, again, in the last 2, we did have kind of burnt toast, 7 and 8 level on your toaster. Smoky character when used in higher percentages. So this could be used in a stout also, but you're going to have to play around, see what you like. Everybody's going to like something different. You might like a little less of the percentage of the grain bill, so say 7%, and somebody else might like 12%. Per this bag, now this chocolate says 400 to 488 level bond, so this is a little bit darker than what they talk about or what I found in the book. So let's go ahead and pour some of this out, and at the end of this I'll bring them all back. I'm trying to keep them on paper towels so I can put them back and use them, but if I can't, no big deal. So there they're laid out. I'm going to put them side by side by the other 2, and we'll kind of get to see what we have. So if we take a look at this one next to the other ones, we can see it is a little bit darker in color than the other ones. Let's go ahead and smell the bag. It kind of smells like a sweeter grain, toasted grain. I mean, it really doesn't bring out the chocolate. I think the coffee obviously has more of a coffee smell than the chocolate, which it should, but it is roasted, so you could get a lighter chocolate out of there. But let's go ahead and taste this and see what we get. Toasted bread's still there. I would say this is an 8 too. It's not as harsh. It's not as bitter. It could be a little bit sweeter. I definitely, out of the taste, I take that back now. I get a touch of chocolate. It's more of a burnt toast, an 8 again on your toaster. But I can tell you I made 2 beers with the chocolate, and I do get a sweeter chocolate smell out of that than the pale malt that I did use or the brown coffee that I use. So letting it sit, steep, mash in for that hour is helping it and bringing out more of those flavors. Now, next we're going to move on to chocolate rye. So chocolate rye might be between chocolate malt and pale chocolate. So I've got it here. Level bond on the Wireman's version that I picked up is 190 to 300 level bond. I'm going to go ahead and put it next to the chocolate just to see what we get. Now also, and this is where I'll talk about the other one that I'm going to pick up. I wanted to pick up the wheat version. When I first went, I did not see it. They only had the rye, but I went back the other day and I could not remember for the life of me if I picked up the wheat or if I picked up the rye, and they had the wheat, so I didn't pick that up. But if we take a look at these, we can definitely see that that chocolate rye is darker than any of the other ones. So even though, and that's the Brew Your Own magazine is what said that this rye might be in between that pale chocolate and that chocolate malt. Now that could be for aroma and that could be for taste, but obviously it's not color, as the other ones look lighter. Even that chocolate at a roast of 470 to 488 does not look as dark as this rye at 190 to 300. Let's go ahead and smell it. I do get a little spiciness. Definitely a different smell, a little bit of chocolate, dark roasted malt in there, maybe a touch of coffee. But yeah, definitely a little spice is in there. Go ahead and close that up just in case it falls. Okay, let's go ahead and taste a couple of these. Wow, even in the taste, it's not as hard. It's softer. Almost an ashy taste. So dark roasted, a little nutty, ashy in there. I don't know anybody that would want to eat this all the time. But it's okay. Yeah, it doesn't, the bitterness isn't there. It seems like it is a smoother taste. So I would almost, as far as like burnt toast, toasted bread, I would put this at like a 6. Almost like if you had a spot that got burnt and you ate that spot plus around it that was nicely toasted, that's what you would get. Because there's just a little ashiness in there. So next up is going to be the malts you would pretty much use in a stout, but you could use them in a porter. You just might have to lessen them in the recipe, use a smaller quantity. So black malt, 450 to 600, espresso, ashy, burnt toast, might lose aromatics when compared to chocolate malts. So you're probably going to want some combination of grains. But you're going to have to decide what you like more. So if this is going to lose aromatics over a chocolate malt, you might want to pair it with a coffee or the pale chocolate or the chocolate to see what you get. Like I said, layering is probably best, and then we get into the dehusk malts. Now today I have the dehusk Carafa 2. And I want to try this. I would say this would be something that you would want to use in a stout, and we will use it in a stout, but I also wanted to use it in a porter to see what it did. Now, because this is darker, this says 350 or 375 to 450 on the bag. I'm going to use it less. I think right now with all the other ones, I'm using around 7.5% of the grain bill is these darker adjunct roasted malts. So I will probably cut this in half. Now I have not brewed with it because I had to open the bag, but I'm just going to pour some out here. There we go. Oh, let's go ahead and smell it before I close it up again. Yeah, in this form, I really don't smell a lot. Yeah, it smells like roasted malt. Maybe a touch of ashiness, and that is about it. I'm sure we're going to be able to taste the difference. If we take a look at the color, I would say it's a tiny bit darker than the chocolate rye. Not very much, though. Just a little bit darker. Let's try a couple of them. Very hard. It's malted, or it's roasted more, so it's going to be harder. Yeah, kind of bitter. Even though it's dehusked, you are still getting some of that bitterness. It's almost burnt. You're going to get bitterness out of there. It seems though, I almost want to say I get more coffee, like very dark roasted coffee out of it. Espresso, yeah, sure, you could say that. Just not, yeah, I would say that espresso is probably right. So if we look at all these side by side, you see you can kind of tell a difference going from lighter to darker. Now, again, I don't believe you should use just one. I think layering is going to be best, but I wanted to start at the beginning and see what we got. Now, this is just the first video. I will make some other ones about malts that you can use in porters. Like right now, the other two malts that I'm using is Crystal 40 and Crystal 60. And that should give us a little bit more of that toasted bread, maybe a little sweetness, and I wanted to compare those two. Now that doesn't mean that you can't use like Crystal 80 and 120. You might have to use a lighter malt, as in these darker malts, when you do that, but it's going to be your preference of what you do. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions or what your best mixture is. If you're on my Facebook 31st Homebrewers page group, I did put a poll up to see what you guys like best. If you're not part of that and you want to, send a message to it and I will invite you. But yeah, so far I've used some of these and I want to get that chocolate wheat just to see what we have, but we're going to combine every single one of these, and also we'll look at the yeasts that are used. Right now I've used US-05 and SO4. Yes, I know US-05 is probably not one that you would want. Hey, but it's a clean yeast. It'll tell us what we want. But we'll get into that. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. Check out some more videos over here. And until next time, happy brewing.